Hello friends, Matt here with Peppercoat Barbecue and welcome back to the Peppercoat deck. Today I got a smoking hot rib challenge for you. It's going to be the Z Grills Pellet Grill versus the tried and true rib champion, the Old Country Barbecue Pits Pecos. Now I'll be smoking 2 racks of baby back ribs today, and I have devised a challenge consisting of 8 categories. I'll be scoring each of these smokers 1 to 5 in each of those categories for a maximum of 40 points for each smoker. Who's gonna win? Will it be pellets or splits? Yeah, not very impressive. There are probably in the neighborhood of 7 million YouTube videos that spend the first 10 minutes showing you how to prep ribs and telling you whether you should or should not remove the membrane. So we're not doing that today, but in the sake of fairness for the challenge, very quickly, I prepped these the same way. I removed the blood from the veins. I did remove the membrane. See how I snuck that in there on you? I used kind of a sweet rub on mine today, and I went pretty heavy because I'm not planning on saucing. And I left these on the counter to sweat for a while I get the smoker started and up to 10. Since one of our categories today is about the ease of cleaning the day after, I wanted to make sure that both of these smokers were clean. I have lined the bottom of them with foil, and we'll talk about this later. So for the Pecos, I started it the same way as always with a little lump charcoal and threw in a couple of cherry splits. And I'm going to give this probably 30 minutes or so to get fired up. The Pecos has been going for 40 minutes now. You can see that we've got a good fire going. I'm going to start locking this down or bring the lid down. I'll close my vents about 3/4 of the way. And I am going to be using my Chef's Temp S1 hub today just to make this a little more manageable. And I'm going to leave the stack all the way open for now until we get up to temp. So the Pecos has been going for about 40 minutes. Have not started the Z Grills Pellet Grill yet. We'll go ahead and do that. You'll see how difficult this is. And the Z Grills has a smoke setting on it, so I'm going to turn this all the way down to 160 degrees. That is the lowest it'll go for smoke. And I'm going to give this a few minutes to get cranked up. So the goal today is to stay below 250 or around 250, 225 to 250. And some of you may be asking why, we're starting at 160 on the Z Grills. And you know the old saying, when in Rome, do as the Romans. Well, I guess when you're in Z Grillville or Pelletville, you do as the pellet grillers. And that seems to be the thing with pellet grills. You start out at that low temperature on those smoke settings just to get a little more smoke on the ribs. This is only my 4th cook on a pellet grill, period. You can see my first cook here on the Z Grills. I'll link that at the end. You can watch that. It was chicken halves. And the chicken halves were really good, and I smoked those around 315 degrees, and they had no smoke flavor, or very, very little smoke flavor at the end. So that's why I wanted to set on this lower setting. I know nothing about using a pellet grill, so feel free to roast me in the comments, but I can assure you I'm doing everything that I can to make this a fair competition between the pellets and between the splits. Because at the end of the day, believe it or not, I really do not care which one of these methods wins. We're an hour into this cook, and the Pecos has been doing really well at holding that 225 to 250. For fire management today, now's a good time to talk about that before we spritz. I'm using cherry in the Pecos, and I'm also burning cherry splits in the Z Grills. But I have cut my splits down, so I'm only using half splits in here, trying to maintain that temperature, even though I am having to come out here and kind of regulate the vents and add these half splits a little more often. And for fire management over here on the pellet grill, I'm going to crank this up to 250 degrees. And yep, still got pellets. We're good. We're going to check the ribs over here on the Pecos first. See what we're looking like 1 hour in, and we're just going to give these a quick spritz. Then now we'll check out the Z Grills. You can see what this one's looking like. It's a little lighter. We're going to spritz this one also. I'm going to continue to manage the fire on the Pecos, get it up around 250. So these are cooking about the same temperature. I'll spritz every hour. You go grab some Cheetos and I'll meet you back here shortly. My plan for this cook today was to just kind of let the ribs dictate the cook. And I noticed at the 2-hour mark when I spritzed the ones on the Pecos, they were already beginning to get quite a bit of color on them and starting to crack a little bit on the top. It's been 2.5 hours now, so I'm gonna check these again. I may go ahead and pull them off and wrap them. The temperature on the Pecos did spike. The highest I've seen it was 277. For the most part, it's been staying between that 250, 260, but it is a little bit ahead of the Z Grills just because we started at 160 over here on the pellet grill. But let's give these a look. You're getting a really good color on these, and I don't want to go any longer. You can see how dry these are getting. They have a nice bark, and the bark set. They're cracking open here on the top and the side. And this is the end that was near the firebox. It's getting a lot darker. And I don't want these to get any darker. I don't want them to dry out anymore. So I'm just going to pull these. You can see that the fat here on the side is really not rendering any, but once we wrap them, it'll render this fat out. I've got the ribs wrapped. Since I'm doing a dry rub style rib today, I'm just using butcher paper. I put a little bit of bacon grease on these, another coating of our seasoning, wrapped them up nice and tight. I'm gonna put them back here on the smoker, and I'm gonna go ahead and slowly start increasing the temperature on this smoker up to 300 or so degrees. And also, since this one did get up to 275, we got a little more color, I'm going to go ahead and bump the Z Grills up to 275. It's been another 30 minutes, so 3 hours that the ribs have been on the pellet grill now. And you can see I did turn these after the 2nd hour, just like I did the ones in the Pecos, just because it was browning on this end. But let me pull you in and give you a closer look at these. So you can see the color is similar, maybe a little less splitting down the top, but we see more over here on the side. And I think that's just because of the shape of these ribs. And the fat on these seems to be just a little bit softer. Maybe it's rendered a little more. So I got these wrapped, same method that I used on the other ones. I'm gonna lay them right back here, almost in the center. And I'm gonna bump the temp up to 300 degrees on the pellet grill also. It's been 1.5 hours in the wrap here on the Pecos, and I'll just have checked these. I think they're ready. You can see the bend in here. I know it's hard to tell with the paper on there, but you see how that's crinkling up. It's bending really easily, very tender. And look, we're hitting like 201, 202. Yeah, these are good. We're gonna pull these off. And our pellet pit ribs have only been going in the wrap for 1 hour now, 30 minutes less than over here. I'm just gonna go ahead and check them. They've probably got a little ways to go. I don't know, they're looking pretty tender. You can see the same bend in here, maybe not quite as much, but this rack was just a tad bit thicker. Let's see if I can get in here and get a temp on these, see what they feel like. Oh yeah. These are actually hotter. That's up to 207. So we're definitely pulling these off also. I'm gonna give those ribs about 30 to 45 minutes to rest before we cut into them. And while we're waiting on that, let's go ahead and start the scoring process. And I wanna start with category number 1, ease of use. And we'll start with the Z Grills because hands down, the Z Grills, the pellet grill in general, it is simple. It is so easy to use. You make sure it's got pellets, you hit the power button, you turn the knob to the temperature you want. It's got this Wi-Fi gadgetry on it, so you can keep track of the temperature in the house. And it's great. The only thing that it didn't do for me, I still had to come out like every hour and I had to spritz. So until the pellet grill companies can figure out how to put a little spritzing machine in there, I'm gonna have to give it a 4. And the Pecos does require a lot more babysitting, even using the S1, and I know that doesn't come with the smoker, but at this point, probably most people are using some kind of thermometers or temperature control where they can track the temperature from wherever they are. And adding that kind of brings the price of this up to, you know, somewhere close to what a pellet grill cost. So all of that being said, and even Still yet, the Pecos, I had to come out every 15, 20 minutes, adjust the dampers, adjust the fire, add a split. I was burning half splits today to keep the fire down. So it's not the worst thing in the world, but I'm going to give it a 2. So in the second category, which I'm calling the overall time, not just the cook time, because the cook time was surprisingly even. It was 4 hours in both of the smokers. I was really shocked that starting at that low temperature, that this cold up and the internal temperature even surpassed what we had over here on the Pecos. But considering all things, we started the Pecos 40 minutes prior to starting the pellet grill. And then when we were through, I pulled the ribs off. I hit the power button over here. It went through the shutdown cycle within 15 minutes. It was cut off, and probably within 45 minutes to an hour, this thing will be cool to the touch. Whereas over here, I still have a full bed of coals that is burning, and it will be hot for hours. And you can expect that with any stick burner. That is kind of expected when using an offset. So we're going to grade on a curve here just a little bit, but I'm going to give the pellet grill a 5. And I'm going to give the stick burner a 2. So we got our ribs out, we're ready to cut them up, but I want you to look for just a minute at the bark and the difference in the color here. So you can see on these, this is the one that came off of the Pecos, off the split burner. It is just a little bit darker, but very little difference that we see in the color on the outside. And if you look at the fat render here, this is the one on the pellet grill. It seems like the fat rendered split open there, it's a lot softer than compared to over here, the one that was on the wood smoker. Didn't seem to render quite as well in that little vein of fat. So for our third and fourth category, number 3 was fat rendering, and I gotta say this one goes to the pellet grill. I think that the fat was rendered out just a little better. We'll know more when we cut it open, but right now I'm gonna give a 4 to the pellet grill and a 3 to the smoker. But when it comes to overall color, I'm going to give a 5 to the Pecos because it is darker. I like the color and the way this bark looks a little better, a little more browning on there. So I'm going to give a 5 to the Pecos, and I'm going to give a 3 to the pellet grill. For the next 2 categories, we're going to look at the moisture retention and then also the depth of smoke. So let's cut open this one right here closest to you. This was in the pellet grill. We'll go ahead and grab one of these first, turn it over where I can see where the bones are. And let's look at one here from the Pecos. All right. So let's look at these. Oh, look at this. This is one that came out of the pellet grill. You can see it's nice and juicy there. See the juice running out of there. It does have a nice pink color. It's pretty light. And then over here's the one that came off of the Pecos. And this one also has some juice, but you can tell this one is not as fat as this one over here. Let's get a piece. Let's get one of these ribs that's over here in a little fatter section. Maybe it'll be a little better comparison. Come over here. So this is the one that was on the stick burner, and you can see that this one here is nice and juicy. Still doesn't seem that this rib had quite the fat content that this one does. But overall, the smoke ring that is in here and the tenderness, the juiciness, I'm gonna have to go again. I'm gonna have to give an extra point to the pellet grill. I really think that's just the rib though. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna give both of them a 4 in both categories, in moisture retention and in the smoke ring, because what do you think? Has this got a better smoke ring? More pink in there? It looks like it, doesn't it?
It does.
Let's go with 5. 5 for the smoke ring on the Pecos, the stick burner, and we'll give a 4 to the pellet grill, which I'm really shocked. I know this is cute, but to make this totally fair, the only way to do this is through a blind taste test. So my wife is going to hand me one of these ribs. I'm going to try it. And I got to say, at this point, I'm a little concerned because the pellet grill is doing much better than I thought it was going to. So hand me a rib. Do you know which one this is?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you know which one that is?
Not yet. Not really sure. Let me have the next one. It's got a really good flavor to it though. No. Where's my other bomb? I'm gonna say this is the pellet grill because I'm not getting much smoke flavor at all. It just doesn't have the depth. It doesn't have the richness. It was cooked well. It pulled off the bone well, but I'm not getting the depth of flavor on this one that I got on the first one. So am I right? Pellet, and this is the stick burner?
I think so. I forgot what you said. I think so.
Did this one come from the pile near you or me?
The pile near me. The one that you liked come from the pile near you. The one.
Okay, then we're right. So this was the pellet grill. This was the stick burner, and hands down, night and day difference. The stick burner, no question, much better flavor. It has a depth of flavor. It has a smokiness to it. I was afraid to say that it was the stick burner when I first put into it, just because the pellet grill had surprised me so much so far. But this is where it really counts. This is where the taste is. And I'm going to give the Pecos a 5, and I'm going to give the pellet grill a 2. And that's being generous. It's the next day, and it's time for the last category, which is cleanup. And to me, that's the worst part of grilling or smoking. So let's see which one of these units is easier to clean up. The cleaning process is somewhat similar. Of course, you're going to scrub down the racks on both of them. I feel like the porcelain coated racks on the Z Grills, they looked like they had more on them, but they clean off just a little bit easier with the grill brush. Both of them were easy cleanup due to having the aluminum foil on the inside catching most of the drippings. Where the big difference is cleaning up the ash. With the stick burner, you can easily open the door, sweep that out, sweep it up into a dustpan or out into a bucket, whatever you want to do with it. Easy peasy, you're done. With the pellet grill, it's not difficult, but you have to remove the heat deflector, and then you have this burn pot down here. I wish this burn pot would come out, or that there was an ash dump or something. Maybe with other models there are, but with the one I currently have, all you can do is vacuum this out. That is the only way to clean it out. So you have to pull out a shop vac and vacuum it out. So to rate the final category, cleanup, and how easy they are to clean up, you're going to get nasty either one. You're going to get greasy, oily. That's to be expected. But I do feel like the cleanup's a little easier on the stick burner. So I'm going to rate this at a 3. And because I have to pull out the shop vac and there's just a little more disassembly, I'm going to give the Z Grills a 2. After totaling up all of the points, we do have a winner. Coming in second place with 28 points out of a possible 40 points is the pellet grill, and then inching ahead barely into victory with 29 points is our stick burner. There are many advantages to using a pellet grill, but I feel like the greatest disadvantage, or maybe that convenience tax that you're paying, is in flavor. Now, at the same time, I know some of you that have been using pellet grills for years, you've developed methods, maybe use a different pellet to get that smoky flavor on there, and there's not that big of a difference. And pellet grills, overall, they're great. And if you're interested in a pellet grill, then you can check out this link from Z Grills. Z Grills has one of the greatest grill deals I have ever seen. You buy one now, you get 10 free over the next 50 years. You can check that out. Also, I'm going to link a video over here at the end that you can check out explaining that program. But tune in next week here to Peppercoat Barbecue. I'll be using the pellet grill again in a very similar challenge, but I will be going against the Oklahoma Joe's Bronco, and we'll be smoking a pork butt. Also, at the end of the day, I don't care if you're using a split burner, a pellet grill, a drum smoker, or even a gas grill. Just get out and cook and have fun. And I'll see you here next time on Peppercoat Barbecue.